Is it really possible to measure a life in days? Or do some days echo louder than time itself? What happens when 11,000 days are not just counted but felt, shared, argued over, celebrated, defended, remixed, and remembered across continents? Why does one name, spoken softly or shouted in stadiums, still feel like a question mark and an exclamation point at the same time? As fans whisper, "Happy 11,000 days with V," are they celebrating a number, or are they quietly acknowledging something rarer? The unfolding of a cultural force still in motion. At first glance, 11,000 days might seem like a neat statistic, the kind of milestone that trends for a day and fades by morning. But Kim Taehyung, known globally as V, has never existed comfortably within neat lines or predictable arcs. His journey resists compression. It stretches, bends, surprises, and sometimes disappears into silence before returning louder, deeper, and more intentional than before. To say "Happy 11,000 days with V" is not to mark an ending or even a midpoint. It is to pause, briefly, in the middle of a moving river and try to describe the current while it's still carrying us forward. From the very beginning, Taehyung's presence carried a contradiction that would become his signature. He arrived in the public eye with an old soul voice wrapped in youthful curiosity, a face that could shift from classical elegance to playful mischief in a heartbeat, and an artistic instinct that felt less trained than lived. Even in his earliest days as part of BTS, there were clues that something unusual was forming. He was not simply performing choreography or delivering lines. He was inhabiting moments, bending them emotionally, sometimes even disrupting expectations. People noticed not just what he did, but how he made them feel doing it. As BTS rose from a modestly known group to a global phenomenon, Taehyung's journey unfolded in parallel but never in shadow. While the group's success story has been analyzed endlessly through charts, sales figures, and cultural impact reports, Taehyung's individual arc is harder to quantify. It lives in glances held too long during performances, in vocal tones that sound like memory itself, in fashion choices that feel less like trends and more like quiet statements. His growth did not scream for attention, it invited it. The early eras of BTS showcased V as a performer with striking visuals and a distinctive baritone, but those labels quickly proved insufficient. As years passed, fans and critics alike began to notice his increasing involvement in shaping atmosphere rather than just occupying it. His stage presence matured, becoming less about sharp edges and more about emotional gravity. There was a sense that he was learning not only how to perform for an audience, but how to hold space for them. Offstage, Taehyung revealed another layer that would deepen his cultural resonance. His love for photography, jazz, classical aesthetics, vintage fashion, and quiet observation painted the picture of an artist constantly collecting fragments of the world. These were not random hobbies displayed for branding purposes. They felt personal, almost private, yet shared generously. Through social media posts that felt more like postcards than announcements, he let fans glimpse how he saw the world. Slower, warmer, tinged with nostalgia, and deeply human, As BTS entered its global peak, the pressure on each member intensified. Stadium tours, international awards, and relentless schedules could have flattened individuality, but for Taehyung, the opposite seemed to happen. His artistic identity sharpened. His voice deepened not just in pitch, but in emotional range. When he sang, it often felt less like performance and more like storytelling whispered directly to the listener. Songs associated with him began to carry a particular mood: introspective, melancholic, romantic without being sweet, reflective without being distant. Then came the moments that confirmed what many had already sensed. Taehyung's solo works did not simply succeed, they lingered. They were played not only for enjoyment, but for comfort, for reflection, for companionship during late nights. His music became something people lived with rather than consumed. In an industry driven by speed and novelty, this ability to slow listeners down became quietly revolutionary. Culturally, Taehyung's influence extended far beyond music. Fashion houses recognized not just his visual appeal but his ability to give garments a story. When he wore something, it did not feel styled, it felt chosen. Runways echoed his impact. Magazines framed him as both modern icon and timeless muse, and designers spoke of his instinctive understanding of mood and texture. He did not chase fashion. Fashion adjusted its pace around him. Acting, too, revealed another facet of his artistry. His foray into drama was not about proving versatility, but about exploration. He approached roles with the same curiosity that defined his music and visuals, allowing vulnerability to exist alongside charm. Even in limited appearances, he left impressions that sparked conversation, hinting at paths not yet fully taken but clearly possible. As the years accumulated, so did the emotional bond between Taehyung and those who followed his journey. Fans did not merely admire him, they grew with him. They watched him navigate fame, friendship, loss, joy, and self-discovery in real time. They noticed when he pulled back to protect his inner world, and when he returned ready to share again. This rhythm of presence and retreat made his appearances feel meaningful rather than routine. The phrase, "each era deepens his unshakable legacy," rings true not because of longevity alone, but because of intention. Taehyung's eras are not defined strictly by albums or hairstyles, but by emotional chapters. There was the era of youthful wonder, the era of exploration, the era of introspection, and now, perhaps, the era of quiet confidence. Each one layered onto the last, creating a legacy that feels lived in rather than manufactured. What makes this legacy unshakable is not perfection but authenticity. Taehyung has never presented himself as untouchable. He has shared doubts, spoken openly about rest and reflection, and allowed imperfections to exist publicly. In doing so, he reshaped what strength looks like in modern celebrity culture. Strength, in his case, became synonymous with self-awareness and emotional honesty. Reaching 11,000 days is, in this context, less about age and more about accumulation. It is the accumulation of moments that shifted how fans understood artistry. It is the accumulation of choices that favored meaning over noise. It is the accumulation of influence that quietly seeped into music, fashion, visual art, and even how fans relate to idols as whole human beings rather than polished products. There is also something profoundly communal about this milestone. Thankful to witness his vision and influence emotion is not a passive statement. It acknowledges that Taehyung's journey has been something observed, shared, debated, and cherished collectively. Fans have built communities around interpreting his lyrics, analyzing his visuals, and celebrating his smallest gestures. In doing so, they became part of the story, witnesses to a life unfolding with intention. And yet, perhaps the most intriguing aspect of this 11,000-day celebration is what it does not conclude. There is no sense of finality here. No farewell. No summary that neatly ties everything together. Instead, there is anticipation. Taehyung stands at this milestone not as a figure looking back, but as an artist still moving forward, still curious, still evolving. What will the next era hold? Will it be quieter or louder? More experimental or more intimate? Will he surprise again by stepping into an unexpected medium or by stripping things back even further? These questions linger not as anxieties, but as excitement. They are part of the pleasure of following an artist who refuses to be predictable. In an industry often obsessed with reinvention for reinvention's sake, Taehyung's evolution feels organic. He does not discard past selves, he carries them forward. The boy who once laughed loudly and danced playfully still exists within the man who now sings with aching restraint. The dreamer who collected art and music still informs the global icon who shapes trends. Nothing is lost, everything is integrated. This is why 11,000 days matter. They represent continuity in a world that constantly pushes for disruption. They represent depth in a culture that often rewards surface. They represent patience in an era of immediacy. Taehyung's journey reminds us that true influence does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it grows quietly, day by day, until one day you look back and realize it has shaped the landscape around IT's messages of celebration ripple across timelines and screens. They carry more than congratulations. They carry gratitude. Gratitude for music that felt like shelter. Gratitude for art that invited reflection. Gratitude for a presence that made space for emotion in an often overwhelming world. To say happy 11,000 days with B is to say thank you for staying true, for growing without losing yourself, and for letting others grow alongside you. And so the story continues. Not concluded, not summarized, but very much alive. The days ahead remain unwritten, but if the past 11,000 days have taught us anything, it is that Taehyung will approach them with the same intention, artistry, and unmistakable presence that brought him here. His legacy is not something he has finished building. It is something we are still watching, still feeling, still discovering, one meaningful day at a time.